Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories, the signal I never wanted to take this job. But when you've got bills to pay and a resume that reads like a cautionary tale, you don't exactly get to be choosy. That's how I ended up as the maintenance supervisor for a cluster of decommissioned radio towers on Mount Blackwood, 40 miles from the nearest town and about 1,000,000 miles from anything resembling a social life. The company that hired me, Meridian Communications, was vague about my duties. Just keep an eye on things until the demolition crew arrives in 6 months, they said. Make sure nobody vandalizes the equipment. Run basic diagnostics once a week, report any irregularities. They didn't mention the isolation, the silence, the way the wind howls through the metal struts of the towers at night, creating sounds that could almost be voices if you listened too hard. And they definitely didn't mention the signal. My first week was uneventful. The facility consisted of 3 main radio towers, massive steel structures that loomed against the sky like skeletal giants, and a small compound of buildings at their base. My living quarters were in what used to be the administrative building, a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette that had been hastily converted from offices. The main control room was in a separate building, filled with outdated equipment that hadn't been used in years. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust. The air smelled of mildew and metal, but it was peaceful in its way. I spent my days exploring the compound, familiarizing myself with the equipment, and reading books I'd brought along. At night, I'd sit on the porch with a beer, watching the red warning lights on the towers blink steadily against the darkening sky. On the 8th day, I ran my first diagnostic check as instructed. It was simple enough, just powering up the main console and running a system verification program. The equipment hummed to life reluctantly, screens flickering with green text as the program ran through its checks. Everything came back normal. I was about to power down when I noticed something odd on one of the auxiliary monitors, a small spike in the readout, barely perceptible. According to the system, Tower 2 was receiving a signal. That was impossible. The towers had been decommissioned over a year ago. They weren't connected to anything anymore. I checked the equipment, thinking it might be a glitch. Everything seemed to be working properly. I ran the diagnostic again. Same result, Tower 2 was picking up something. Curious, I activated the audio output. At first there was nothing but static, then faintly I heard it, a series of tones, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, over and over again. SOS in Morse code. A chill ran down my spine despite the rational explanations that immediately sprang to mind. It was probably just interference from another radio source. Maybe military communications from a nearby base or a ham radio operator playing around, nothing sinister. I made a note in the log and powered down the system. That should have been the end of it, but that night I couldn't sleep. The tones kept playing in my head, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, over and over. Around 3 in the morning I gave up, pulled on my boots and jacket, and walked out to Tower 2 with a flashlight. The night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. Tower 2 stood silhouetted against them, its red warning light pulsing steadily. I circled the base, not sure what I was looking for. Everything seemed normal. Then I noticed something strange. The warning light at the top of the tower wasn't blinking in its usual pattern. It was flashing in groups of 3, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. I stood there, flashlight beam fixed on the light, my breath fogging in the cold air. It had to be a coincidence. The light was probably malfunctioning, and my mind was making connections that weren't there. I returned to my quarters and spent the rest of the night researching radio signals on my laptop. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just atmospheric interference, perhaps bouncing off the ionosphere from thousands of miles away. Nothing to worry about. The next day passed without incident. I didn't run any diagnostics, focusing instead on cataloging equipment for the demolition crew, but I kept finding my eyes drawn to Tower 2, watching its warning light. During the day it was off. I told myself I'd imagined the pattern. That night I dreamed of the signal. In my dream I was climbing Tower 2, the metal cold beneath my hands. The higher I climbed, the louder the signal became, no longer just tones but a voice, distorted and desperate, repeating those same 3 patterns. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but I knew it was calling to me specifically. I woke up drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around my legs. The digital clock on my nightstand read 3:33 a.m. Through the window I could see Tower 2, its light flashing that same pattern against the night sky. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. I didn't go back to sleep. The next morning I called my supervisor at Meridian Communications. When he finally picked up, I tried to sound casual as I asked about previous signal activity at the towers. "The place has been dark for over a year," he said. "Why do you ask?" I hesitated, suddenly aware of how crazy I would sound. "Just curious. I thought I picked up some interference during the diagnostic check." There was a pause on the other end. What kind of interference? Just static, probably, maybe a crossed signal from somewhere else. Another pause, longer this time. Run another diagnostic. If you pick up anything unusual, record it and send it to me. I agreed and hung up, unsettled by his tone. He hadn't seemed surprised exactly, more like cautious. That afternoon I ran another diagnostic. This time the signal was stronger. The tones were clearer, and beneath them I could almost hear a voice, though I couldn't make out any words. I recorded it as instructed and sent the file to my supervisor. He called back 20 minutes later. "I'm sending someone out there," he said without preamble. "A specialist. He'll arrive tomorrow morning." "What's going on?" I asked. "Is this some kind of test?" "No test," he replied. "Just stay away from Tower 2 until he gets there. Don't run any more diagnostics, and whatever you do, don't try to respond to the signal." He hung up before I could ask any more questions. That night was the longest of my life. I sat in the administrative building, all lights on, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands as I stared out the window at Tower 2. Its light continued to flash in that same pattern, but now it seemed brighter somehow, more insistent. I must have dozed off at some point because suddenly I was jolted awake by a sound, a crackling, staticky noise coming from somewhere in the room. I looked around wildly before realizing it was coming from my laptop, which I'd left open on the table. The screen was filled with static, but through the speakers came that same pattern of tones. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. But now beneath it I could clearly hear a voice, distorted and distant but unmistakably human. "Hello, can anyone hear me? Please respond." I slammed the laptop shut and backed away from it, heart pounding. That was impossible. The laptop wasn't connected to anything. It couldn't be picking up radio signals. I grabbed my phone to call my supervisor, but there was no signal. Of course not. I was on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. The rest of the night I sat with my back against the wall, watching the door, the window, the laptop. The warning light on Tower 2 continued its relentless pattern, and I could swear it was growing brighter, pulsing faster. By dawn I was exhausted but too wired to sleep. I made a fresh pot of coffee and waited for the specialist to arrive. He showed up around 10 in a nondescript black SUV. He was a tall, thin man with gray hair and eyes that seemed too dark, almost black. He introduced himself simply as Miller. "You've been experiencing some unusual signal activity," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded and led him to the control room, explaining what I'd observed over the past few days. He listened without comment, his expression unreadable. In the control room, I powered up the system and showed him the readings from Tower 2. The signal was even stronger now, a steady pulse on the monitor. Miller studied it for a long moment, then turned to me. "How many times have you run diagnostics on this system?" 3, I said. "Just like I was instructed," he nodded slowly. "And have you experienced any unusual dreams since arriving here? Insomnia, headaches?" I stared at him. "What does that have to do with the signal?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a device I didn't recognize, something like a Geiger counter but more complex. He switched it on and moved it around the room. It emitted a soft, pulsing tone that increased in pitch as he pointed it toward Tower 2. "What is that thing?" I asked. "It measures certain types of radiation," he said vaguely. "Not harmful kinds necessarily, just unusual." He spent the next hour taking readings throughout the compound, paying special attention to Tower 2. I followed him at a distance, growing increasingly uneasy. He barely spoke, just occasionally muttered to himself or made notes on a small tablet. Finally, he returned to the control room and connected his own equipment to the main console. He typed rapidly, screens filling with data I couldn't interpret. "What's going on?" I demanded. "What is that signal? Who's sending it?" Miller looked at me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "What do you think is happening here, Mr. Reed?" "I don't know," I admitted. At first I thought it was just interference, maybe a crossed signal from somewhere else, but now I hesitated. "It seems like someone is trying to communicate. The SOS pattern, the voice on my laptop." Miller nodded slowly. "That's one interpretation. What's yours?" He turned back to his equipment. "Radio towers like these don't just receive signals. They amplify them, broadcast them. They're conduits." He paused. "Sometimes they can become conduits for things that aren't conventional signals." I stared at him. "What are you talking about? These towers were shut down for a reason," he said. "About 18 months ago, the operators began picking up anomalous signals. At first just patterns like what you've observed, then voices. They assumed it was interference, just as you did." He tapped something on his tablet and a new screen appeared, showing a graph with a distinctive pattern, the same pattern I'd been seeing. The signals grew stronger. The operators began experiencing symptoms: insomnia, vivid dreams, headaches. One operator claimed to have conversations with the voice in the signal. He said it told him it was trapped somewhere and needed help to get out. A chill ran through me. "Trapped where?" Miller looked up at me, his expression grave. He said it was trapped between places, between realities, that the towers were like lighthouse beacons that it could see from where it was. I laughed, a short, nervous sound. That's crazy, yes, Miller agreed. The operator in question was eventually diagnosed with schizophrenia brought on by stress and isolation. The company shut down the facility shortly after. Relief washed over me. There was a rational explanation after all. So this is all just some kind of psychological effect. The isolation is making me imagine things. I didn't say that, Miller replied. I said the operator was diagnosed with schizophrenia. I didn't say that was the correct diagnosis. He turned back to his equipment and pulled up a new screen, an audio waveform. This is the recording you sent to your supervisor yesterday. He hit play. The familiar pattern of tones filled the room, and beneath them that distant, distorted voice. Hello, can anyone hear me? Please respond. Miller paused the recording. Now listen to this. This was recorded 18 months ago by the operator who was later hospitalized. He played another recording, the same pattern of tones. The same voice saying the exact same words. My mouth went dry. It could be the same person. Maybe they've been broadcasting all this time. From where? Miller asked. And how? These towers aren't connected to any broadcast network anymore. They're standalone structures with no power source other than what's needed for the warning lights. Then how are they picking up anything? Miller shut down his tablet and began packing up his equipment. That's what I'm here to find out. And to stop, he instructed me to return to my quarters and stay there until he called for me. I argued, but his tone made it clear it wasn't a request. As I left the control room, I saw him removing what looked like small explosive charges from his bag. Back in my quarters, I paced restlessly, checking my watch every few minutes. Through the window, I could see Miller at the base of Tower 2, attaching something to the structure. What the hell was going on? Was he planning to demolish the tower? That couldn't be safe for just one person to do. After about an hour, my laptop suddenly came to life again, the screen filling with static. I approached it cautiously. Through the speakers came that voice again, clearer now. Please help me. He's going to close the way. I'll be trapped here forever. I slammed the laptop shut again, my heart racing. This was insane. None of this made any sense. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Miller. Come to Tower 2, he said. I need your assistance. I hesitated. What are you doing out there? I'm placing containment devices around the tower. They'll neutralize the signal without damaging the structure. What about demolishing it? There was a pause. Who said anything about demolition? My blood ran cold. You were placing charges on the tower. I saw you. Another pause. Mr. Reed, I haven't placed any explosives. I've been setting up monitoring equipment. Are you feeling all right? I looked out the window again. Tower 2 stood against the darkening sky, its warning light now flashing rapidly, no longer in any pattern I could discern. At its base, Miller was looking up at me, phone to his ear, a concerned expression on his face. I'll be right there, I said and hung up. As I walked toward Tower 2, a strange calm settled over me. The air felt different, heavier, charged with something I couldn't identify. The warning light at the top of the tower was pulsing faster now, almost strobing. Miller was waiting at the base, surrounded by equipment I didn't recognize. Are you experiencing any unusual symptoms? He asked as I approached. Disorientation, auditory hallucinations. I shook my head, even though the answer was obviously yes. What's really going on here, Miller? What is that signal? He studied me for a moment, then sighed. The towers were originally built for more than just commercial radio broadcasting. They were part of a government research project studying certain frequencies that don't occur naturally. What kind of frequencies? The kind that might allow communication across dimensional boundaries, he said, his voice matter of fact. The project was terminated when they realized what was answering. I stared at him, waiting for him to smile, to tell me he was joking. He didn't. You're saying the government built these towers to talk to, what, aliens? Ghosts? Neither, Miller said. Something else, something that exists in the spaces between realities, something that's been trying to find a way into our world for a very long time. He turned to his equipment and began adjusting settings. The signals started again 3 days ago, according to your logs, weak at first, then growing stronger. That's consistent with what happened before. It starts by establishing a connection, then gradually strengthens it until what? Miller looked up at the tower. Until it can use the tower as a doorway. I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. You're serious, completely. He handed me a small device with a simple display showing a pulsing dot. I need you to take this to the control room and connect it to the main console. It will help me isolate the frequency and neutralize it. I took the device, turning it over in my hands, and if I don't believe any of this, if I think you're just as crazy as that operator who got committed, then a lot of people are going to die, Miller said simply, starting with you. As if to emphasize his point, the warning light on Tower 2 suddenly flared brilliantly, then went out completely. In the sudden darkness, I could see something else, a faint bluish glow emanating from the center of the tower's structure, pulsing like a heartbeat. I ran to the control room, the device clutched in my hand. The main console was already active when I arrived, screens filled with scrolling data, speakers emitting that same pattern of tones, louder now, almost painfully so. I connected Miller's device as instructed. The screen immediately displayed a countdown, 5 o'clock, 4:59, 4:58. My phone rang, Miller again. The device is counting down, I said. What happens when it reaches 0? It sends out a cancellation signal, he replied. It should disrupt the connection and force the entity back to its own reality. It's worked before. I looked at the screens, at the patterns scrolling faster and faster, and if it doesn't work this time, there was a pause. Then the entity completes its transition. It uses the tower as an anchor point to enter our reality fully. And then what? I don't know, Miller admitted. No entity has ever made it that far. But based on what we've learned from the partial communications, it wouldn't be good. The countdown reached 3 o'clock. Outside, the blue glow in Tower 2 was growing brighter, pulsing faster. Stay in the control room, Miller instructed. Whatever happens, whatever you hear, don't leave until the countdown is complete. He hung up. I stared at the device, watching the seconds tick away. 2:45, 2:44, 2:43. The tones from the speakers changed, becoming more urgent. The voice beneath them grew clearer. Please, it said, don't do this, I just want to come home. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the countdown. 2:30, 2:29, 2:28. I'm not what he says I am, the voice continued. I'm human, just like you. I was trapped during an experiment. These towers are my only way back. My hand hovered over the device. What if Miller was wrong? What if this really was a person trapped somehow? He's lying to you, the voice said, as if reading my thoughts. Miller isn't trying to save anyone. He's keeping me prisoner. Look outside if you don't believe me. Against my better judgment, I moved to the window. Tower 2 was now engulfed in that blue glow, pulsing like a beacon. At its base, Miller stood with his arms raised toward it, mouth moving as if chanting, though I couldn't hear anything over the tones from the speakers. See, the voice said, he's not trying to stop anything. He's conducting a ritual. He serves them, the ones who trapped me here. The countdown reached 2 o'clock. The blue glow from Tower 2 suddenly expanded, shooting upward into the night sky like a pillar of light. My phone rang again. I answered without checking who it was. Don't listen to it, Miller said urgently. Whatever it's telling you, it's lying. It's manipulating you. That's what it does. How do I know you're not lying? I demanded. This all sounds insane. Think about it, Miller said. If I wanted to conduct some kind of ritual, why would I give you a device that could stop it? Why would I leave you alone with it? He had a point. I looked back at the countdown. 1:30, 1:29, 1:28. He's trying to confuse you, the voice said from the speakers. Disconnect the device. Let me come home. I've been lost for so long. The voice sounded so human, so desperate. But then I noticed something as it spoke. The patterns on the screens changed, becoming more complex, more alien. What are you? I whispered. The voice changed then, becoming deeper, multi-layered, as if several voices were speaking at once. I am what waits between, I am what watches from the spaces you cannot see, and I am so very hungry. The countdown reached 1 o'clock. Outside, the pillar of blue light from Tower 2 was widening, the air around it seeming to distort and ripple. 1 minute, Miller said through the phone. Just hold on for 1 more minute. The screens in the control room began to flicker, the data scrolling faster than I could follow. The voice from the speakers was no longer using words, just producing a series of sounds that made my skin crawl and my head ache. 0:45, 0:44, 0:43. The lights in the control room began to flicker as well, then went out completely, leaving only the glow from the screens and Miller's device. The temperature dropped suddenly, my breath fogging in the air. 0:30, 0:29, 0:28. Something slammed against the door of the control room hard enough to make the hinges creak, then again and again. A rhythmic pounding that matched the pulsing of the light outside. 0:15, 0:14, 0:13. The pounding stopped. In the silence that followed, I could hear something else, a soft, wet sound like something viscous dripping onto the floor. It was coming from the ceiling. I looked up slowly. The ceiling was moving, bulging downward in places as if something was pressing against it from above, something that had mass but no definite shape. 0:05, 0:04, 0:03. The ceiling split open. Something began to emerge, something dark and glistening, with too many limbs, too many eyes, all focused on me. 0:02, 0:01. No, the voice from the speakers screamed, no longer even remotely human. No, 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 0 o'clock. Miller's device emitted a high-pitched tone, different from anything I'd heard before. The screens in the control room went blank. The thing in the ceiling convulsed, then began to recede, pulling back into whatever impossible space it had emerged from. Outside, the pillar of blue light from Tower 2 flickered, then collapsed in on itself with a sound like thunder. The entire tower shuddered, metal groaning, then silence. I sat in the darkness of the control room, shaking for what felt like hours. Eventually, there was a knock at the door. "Mr. Reed," Miller's voice. "It's over, you can come out now." I opened the door cautiously. Miller stood there, looking exhausted but calm. Behind him, Tower 2 stood silent against the night sky, its warning light once again blinking in its normal, regular pattern. What was that thing?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Miller shook his head. "It doesn't have a name in any human language, we just call it the signal." "Is it gone, for now?" he said. "The cancellation worked, it's been forced back to its own reality, but it will try again." "It always does." He began packing up his equipment. "You should leave this place," he said. "I'll tell Meridian you had a family emergency. They'll send someone else." "Someone else who doesn't know what's really going on?" I asked. "Someone else you can use as bait." Miller paused. "You weren't bait, Mr. Reed. You were a witness. We needed to confirm the entity's return before we could act. So you just let me think I was going crazy. Let me believe I was hallucinating everything. Would you have believed the truth if I'd told you from the beginning?" he asked. I had no answer for that. I left the next morning. Miller stayed behind to secure the site, whatever that meant. As I drove down the mountain, I kept glancing in my rearview mirror at the towers receding in the distance. 3 days later, I was settled in a motel in a small town about 100 miles away, trying to figure out what to do next when my laptop suddenly came to life. The screen filled with static. Through the speakers came a familiar pattern of tones. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. Then a voice, not the inhuman thing from Tower 2, but Miller's voice, distorted and desperate. "Hello, can anyone hear me? Please respond, I'm trapped. The containment failed, it's still here. It's using the towers to spread. Please, if anyone can hear this, stay away from radio towers. Stay away from signals. It's learning, it's adapting." His voice cut off abruptly, replaced by another, that multi-layered, inhuman voice from before. "Found you," it said. The screen went black, but my phone lit up with a notification. A text message from an unknown number containing only 3 words, "Coming for you. I've been running ever since, staying off the grid. No phones, no computers, no radios, nothing that can receive a signal. I'm writing this by hand in a notebook, in a cabin deep in the woods where there's no cell service, no internet, no technology more advanced than a gas generator. But sometimes at night I swear I can hear it, that pattern of tones coming from the old transistor radio the cabin's owner left behind, even though the batteries are dead and the antenna is broken. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. And sometimes when I look out the window, I think I can see a faint blue glow between the trees, pulsing like a heartbeat. It's found me again. And I don't think Miller's cancellation device is going to save me this time. If you're reading this, if you ever hear a signal like I've described, run. Don't listen to what it says. Don't try to help it. Just run. Because it's not trapped anymore, it's free, and it's hungry, and it's coming for all of us.